2 billion cups. That's roughly how many cups of coffee people drink today, somewhere in the world. And they'll drink about the same number tomorrow. Coffee is grown on 4 continents, shipped across oceans, and at different points in history, it's been declared sacred, banned as sinful, and guarded as a state secret worth killing over. But here's the strange part. The story most people have heard about how humans first discovered coffee, a herder, and some unusually energetic goats, doesn't show up anywhere in the written record until roughly 800 years after it supposedly happened. So if that isn't the real story, what is? Coffee didn't just wake people up. It reshaped how humans prayed, worked, argued, and gathered. Long before a single European had tasted it, coffee had already been declared holy by some religious scholars and forbidden by others. Later, one region would guard it so closely that smuggling a single living coffee seed across its border could reportedly cost you your life. To understand how an ordinary cup of coffee earned that kind of power, we need to go back to where the plant itself began. Not in a monastery and not with a goat herder, but on a mountainside in East Africa. Long before anyone wrote any of this down, coffee has one true birthplace: the highland forests of southwestern Ethiopia. There, the plant still grows wild in the shade of taller trees, producing a fruit that looks more like a cherry than a bean, a soft red skin wrapped around 2 green seeds. For generations, this region was home to the Oromo people, and their oral traditions describe a relationship with this plant that has nothing to do with brewing. Coffee, in this tradition, wasn't sipped. It was eaten. People crushed the ripe cherries, mixed them with animal fat, and pressed the mixture into small energy balls. A kind of ancient trail food, carried on long journeys, and, according to tradition, into battle. It's a practical, almost unglamorous use for a plant that would eventually launch a global industry. And historians will tell you something honest here. Nobody can put an exact date on when this practice began. There's no ancient coffee-stained pot to dig up, no preserved wrapper, no artifact behind museum glass. What survives is oral tradition, carried through generations, describing a bond with this plant that likely predates any written history of it. So the very first chapter of coffee's story isn't a dramatic discovery. It's just daily life on a mountainside. The moment coffee became a drink, deliberately brewed, not eaten, happened somewhere else and centuries later. But first, let's talk about the story you've probably already heard. You may know this one already. A goat herder, often called Kaldi, is watching his flock on a hillside when he notices something strange. His goats are prancing, bleating, practically dancing, refusing to settle down for the night. Curious, he traces the behavior to a shrub covered in bright red berries. He tries a few himself and feels a sudden rush of energy. Excited, he carries the berries to a nearby monastery. According to the story, the monks are suspicious at first. Some versions even say they toss the berries into a fire, convinced they're cursed. But the roasting berries fill the air with such an incredible smell that the monks rescue them, grind them up, and dissolve them in hot water. And just like that, the legend goes, the world had its first cup of coffee. It's a wonderful story. It's also almost certainly not true. Here's the problem. This tale doesn't appear in writing until the year 1671 in Rome, penned by an Italian scholar named Antoine Faustus Nyron, while he was collecting stories about coffee for European readers. That's roughly 800 years after the story is supposed to have happened. And there's a second twist hiding inside the first one. Nyron's original version never uses the name Kaldi, and it isn't even set in Ethiopia. It's set across the Red Sea, in Yemen. The Ethiopian goat herder we picture today was stitched together over the following 2 centuries through children's books and magazine retellings, long after Nyron's original account. So if a goat herder didn't discover coffee, who did? The honest answer is less magical, but more interesting. The earliest solid evidence of anyone roasting, brewing, and deliberately drinking coffee comes from Sufi religious communities in Yemen, in the middle of the 1400s. Picture a small room lit by a single lamp, a group of worshippers standing through the darkest hours of the night, chanting prayers meant to last until dawn. Staying awake through those hours was a genuine physical struggle. Coffee solved it. Worshippers called the drink kahwa, a word that already existed in Arabic, most likely borrowed from a term for wine, since it was dark, bitter, and noticeably changed how the body felt, even without a drop of alcohol in it. Brewed hot from roasted beans, kahwa let people stay alert through the night without breaking Islamic law. Word spread fast. Within decades, dedicated coffee houses, kahveh-khaneh, were opening across Yemen, then Mecca, then Cairo. By 1517, coffee had reached Constantinople, capital of the Ottoman Empire. But these houses weren't just places to grab a drink. People gathered there to talk, trade news, play games, and debate the issues of the day. In a world with no newspapers and no internet, a coffee house was where you went to find out what was actually happening. And that popularity is exactly what made coffee dangerous. In June of 1511, the governor of Mecca, a man named Khair Beg, walked past a mosque and saw worshippers drinking coffee as they prepared for a night of prayer. Furious, he ordered the city's coffee houses shut down. Officially, his concern was that coffee acted like an intoxicant, similar to wine. Historians widely believe his real fear was something else. Coffee houses were where people gathered to gossip, argue, and criticize the people in charge, including him. A council of religious scholars debated the question and sided with him. Coffee was banned in Mecca. The ban didn't hold. Authorities in Cairo overturned the decision, and Khair Beg soon lost his position over the affair. But the episode revealed something important. Coffee wasn't just a drink anymore. It was a source of real political power, and the people who controlled it knew exactly what they had. So Yemen decided to keep it. For generations, the region that grew and roasted the world's coffee refused to let a single living plant cross its border. Traders could buy roasted beans that could never sprout, but the raw, plantable seed stayed firmly under lock and key. Some accounts describe the penalty for smuggling live seeds out of the country as death itself. For a long time, that strategy worked. If you wanted coffee, you bought it from Yemen, on Yemen's terms. Nobody else on earth was growing it, until somebody broke the rule. According to a tradition still honored in southern India today, a Sufi traveler named Baba Budan passed through the Yemeni port of Mecca sometime in the 1600s on his way home from a pilgrimage. He fell for coffee completely, and rather than walk away with just a memory of the taste, he decided to take the plant itself. He couldn't simply pack a bag of beans. Roasted beans were dead, useless for planting, and freely for sale anyway. What he needed were raw, living seeds, exactly what guards at the port were watching for. So the story goes that he hid 7 of them against his body, some accounts say tucked into his beard, and walked out of Arabia undetected. Back home, in the hills of what is now Karnataka, India, he planted them. They grew, and Yemen's monopoly, centuries in the making, was over. Historians can't confirm every detail of Baba Budan's journey the way they can confirm the Mecca ban of 1511. But the outcome isn't in dispute. Within decades, coffee cultivation had spread to India, then to the island of Java, then into the hands of Dutch and French traders who carried seedlings across oceans to colonies in the Americas. Once the plant itself was loose in the world, there was no putting it back. By the mid-1600s, coffee houses were opening in Venice, then Oxford, then London, where they earned the nickname penny universities, because for the price of a single cup, anyone could sit down, read the news, and argue politics with total strangers. Within about a decade, London alone had more than 80 of them. Some historians believe those very conversations helped fuel the Age of Enlightenment. A plant that started as trail food on an Ethiopian mountainside had become one of the most valuable, most fought-over commodities on the planet. So, how did ancient humans discover coffee? The honest answer is not all at once, and not thanks to any one person. It wasn't a single lightning bolt moment. It was the Oromo people finding a use for a wild fruit, long before anyone wrote it down. It was Yemeni mystics turning that fruit into a tool for devotion. It was a governor who tried to silence it, a monopoly that tried to contain it, and a traveler who apparently decided a locked border wasn't going to stop him. The next time you hold a warm cup of coffee, you're not just holding a drink. You're holding the end result of hundreds of years of human curiosity, faith, ambition, and a fair amount of risk-taking passed hand to hand until it finally reached yours. So the next time someone tells you coffee's origin story is just about a herder and some dancing goats, you'll know the truth is even stranger. If you enjoyed digging past the legend to find what actually happened, subscribe. There are a lot more ordinary objects out there hiding extraordinary histories.